In a small Virginia port town, a lodge keeps a ledger. Across 9 months, the book takes in one name 3 times, on 3 separate lines, marking 3 separate steps. The man is 21. He has land but no great fortune, no college behind him, and a militia commission he has never once used in the field. The lodge that keeps the ledger holds no charter from anyone. Welcome to Same Day, Different Century. I'm Zach. Today is August 4th. The town is Fredericksburg, a tobacco port of warehouses, wharves, and taverns. The young man is George Washington, who grew up just across the river at Ferry Farm. In the summer of 1753, he's 21 years old, and his position is easy to misread. He is neither poor nor powerful. His father, Augustine, died when George was 11. With him died the arrangement that had sent George's older half-brothers to school in England. There was no college for the fourth son, no legal training, and no tour of Europe. What he got instead was mathematics and a surveyor's chain. At 17, he was appointed surveyor of Culpeper County, licensed through the College of William and Mary, and spent his late teens running property lines through the backcountry for the Fairfax family, the largest landholders in the colony. Survey work paid in cash and in something scarcer, first-hand knowledge of which land was worth having. In 1751, he sailed to Barbados with his half-brother Lawrence, who was dying of tuberculosis. It was the only time in his life Washington left the American mainland. On the island he caught smallpox, survived, and carried the scars afterward. Lawrence did not recover, and died at Mount Vernon in July 1752. The death removed Washington's patron, his model, and his nearest link to Virginia's ruling circle. It also opened a vacancy. Lawrence had held the adjutancy of the Virginia militia, and Lieutenant Governor Robert Dinwiddie soon divided that office into districts and gave one of them to the younger brother. The rank of major, a salary of £100 a year, and no military experience of any kind. Washington was 20 years old. This is the man the lodge takes in, a skilled surveyor with a dead father, a dead half-brother, a borrowed title, and ambitions considerably larger than his inheritance. The lodge itself was modest, and at that moment, unofficial. It kept minutes, collected fees, and worked the degrees, but it held no warrant from any Grand Lodge in Britain. It operated as many colonial lodges did, on custom and the working assumption that Masons could constitute themselves. Not until 1758, 5 years after Washington's third degree, did it obtain a charter from the Grand Lodge of Scotland. Why Washington joined, no document says. He left no letter explaining it, and anyone who tells you what was in his mind that autumn is guessing. What historians can point to is the company. Lodge members in a town like Fredericksburg were merchants, planters, tavern keepers, and minor office holders. Precisely the men a young surveyor and militia officer needed to know. And the fraternity's stated business, moral self-improvement through instruction and ceremony, fit a young man already given to it. As a schoolboy, he had copied out by hand more than 100 maxims on conduct in company, a French courtesy text translated into English. He was, on the evidence, someone who believed character could be assembled deliberately, like a survey. On November 4th, 1752, the lodge entered him as an entered apprentice and noted the fee, just over £2. On March 3rd, 1753, he was passed to the second degree, fellow craft. On August 4th, 5 months later, he was raised to master mason. Each step required work outside the room. 18th century lodges taught by catechism, fixed questions and fixed answers, learned by heart, delivered aloud before the assembled members. No lodge would admit to using a printed book, though printed books existed and everyone knew it. The third degree, as practiced in this period, turned on a piece of ritual drama. A master builder killed rather than surrender what he had been trusted with, and then symbolically restored. That action is where the word in the ledger comes from. He was not admitted or promoted. He was raised. What the ledger does not contain is nearly everything a storyteller would want. No list of who stood in the room, no account of what was said, No word from Washington about the evening, then or later. The temptation is to fill that silence, and the honest thing is to leave it. 12 weeks after his raising, on the last day of October 1753, Washington rode out of Williamsburg carrying Dinwiddie's letter to the French commander in the Ohio country. He covered several hundred miles each way through the late autumn and winter, delivered the ultimatum, was refused, and came back. His account of the journey was printed in Williamsburg the following year and reprinted in London. At 21, he was a name in imperial correspondence. Nothing in the record suggests the lodge produced that mission. It came from Fairfax's patronage, from his knowledge of the backcountry, and from his willingness to volunteer for a winter errand few would have wanted. The lodge did something quieter. In a life so far shaped by other men's deaths and other men's favor, it was one structure that measured him and returned a verdict. What the third degree gave him was permanent. What it asked of him afterward, in practice, was almost nothing. Through the Revolution, Freemasonry moved with the army. Officers organized traveling lodges attached to regiments, and the fraternity's language of brotherhood crossed lines of colony and religion in a force that badly needed both. At the end of 1779, an army lodge floated the idea of a National Grand Lodge, and a convention that winter put Washington's name to it. It went nowhere. No such body was ever formed. The pattern held after the war. In 1788, the Alexandria Lodge took a new Virginia charter and named Washington its first master under it. He was elected president the following year, making him the only American president to hold that Masonic office at the time of his election, an office he never once presided over, and gave up before his first year in New York was out. At his first inauguration, no Bible was on hand at Federal Hall. One was fetched from St. John's Lodge No. 1, a few blocks away. More than a century later it came out again, and 4 presidents since have sworn on it. In September 1793, he laid the Capitol cornerstone wearing Masonic regalia. A republic with no established church borrowed a fraternity's ceremony to consecrate its own building. Against all that, his own accounting is bracing. Writing in 1798 to a clergyman who believed he presided over American Masonry, Washington corrected the error and added that he had not been inside a lodge more than once or twice in 30 years. Both things are true at once, and the gap between them is where the myths grow. There was no national Masonic order under Washington. The Constitution was not a Masonic document. Estimates of how many signers belonged vary, and the defensible number is well below what popular accounts claim. Historians do divide on the larger question. One line of thinking treats the lodges as a training ground for the new republic, voluntary, self-governing, oath-bound societies that spread a working vocabulary of virtue and merit. Another holds that Masonry was one association among many, and that its influence has been inflated by admirers and conspiracists alike. In December 1799, he died at Mount Vernon, and 4 days later, his own Alexandria Lodge conducted the Masonic burial service at his tomb. That same day, different century. I'm Zach. We'll be back tomorrow with another date, another story. Thanks for listening.